while we're waiting for that, I'll tell you a bit about myself, because my career was in the city, but what my real passion was always about health. So I would read avidly anything I could lay my hands on. I followed lots of different doctors, medics from the States. They all talked about having their blood work done. And I wanted my blood work done. But in the UK, where can you go to get your blood work done? And it was a real problem for me. So my company used to send me along for my Bupa health screen, and I would say, well, that's great, but I want you to add on a homocysteine test. I want you to add on a vitamin D test. I asked them for all these things that I was really interested in measuring, because I would read about the positive effects. I'd read about the negative effects of high homocysteine or high inflammation. And I thought, well, how do I know what my own are if I can't measure them? So I was intrigued and I wanted to know. So when I left the city, I left with the intention of starting up a direct-to-consumer health testing company. I didn't want to turn up on my doctor's doorstep every day or wherever asking for blood tests that I knew A, they didn't have the budget for, B, they wouldn't be able to interpret for me, and C, they had no interest in providing for me. It was quite a humiliating experience the times I did try it. Before I did that, I thought, well, I'll Google online and see, is there anyone already in the UK doing direct-to-consumer? And I came across a little company called Medichecks. Medichecks had been started by a mother who was a health screening nurse and her son who was interested in the internet. And they essentially took a laboratory catalogue and put the whole thing online and waited to see what happened. And what happened is they gained a few customers. I came across them, I persuaded my family business to buy them, and then I've been working with them to grow the direct-to-consumer blood testing market in the UK ever since. All I can say is my family are very patient investors. We did this over 10 years ago, and the market was virtually nowhere for a lot of that. You know, would grow slightly. I couldn't understand it because I thought, well, if I'm reading about vitamin D and want to know what my levels are, why doesn't everybody else want to know what their levels are? But increasingly now people do, and actually in the last 3 years we've seen really significant growth, and there are a few factors I think behind that that we can talk about, but one of them is the growth of tracking and biohacking. And I would consider myself one of the original biohackers. Now we associate them with people in Silicon Valley measuring everything. But actually, I was interested. I wanted to experiment with my health. And if I was going to make an experiment with my diet, or I was going to give up drinking, or I was going to do anything, I wanted to see how it affected my inner health, how it affected my biomarkers. And that's really the sort of trend that we're seeing nowadays. People are measuring much more, they're changing behaviour, and they're wanting to test the impact. And that's really, if my talk ever comes up, what I was going to talk about. So my slide, my opener, is how can tracking help change behaviour? And the first thing I wanted to do was just ask everybody about what they track. So I think that there's the growth in wearables, and I think it's very common that people track their steps. Do many people track their steps in the audience through wearing a wearable? People track the units of alcohol they drink. They're now starting to track their sleep. I always wonder if a Martian came down and saw what we were doing, using wearables to measure how many steps we'd taken in a day, how many hours we've been asleep, they'd probably think we were completely insane. But people are doing it, and they're doing it quite regularly, and they're trying to learn from it in terms of how they can adjust their behaviour. And we also track calories. Now, I know a lot of people have talked about the fact that actually counting calories is quite a negative approach to nutrition and weight loss. But actually, a lot of people have shown that if you do track, if you write down everything you eat, if you do get on the scales every morning, actually you have more chance of losing weight sustainably. And then weighing yourself every morning helps your chances of keeping it off. So there is a sense that we can put our head in the sands and not really know what's going on in our bodies if we don't measure. So I'm quite an advocate for measuring. I always measure. And as soon as anything goes out of line a small way, I act to get it back in line. So what's happening now? Now is the fact that these are external things that we can track, but they're all things that actually we could have a guess at. We could guess at, well, don't even need to guess, do we, how many hours we slept, and we don't need to guess at how many units of alcohol we drank. We can guess about our calories and normally underestimate them, which is why writing them down is actually very beneficial. And we can probably guess about our steps. The things we can't guess about are going on inside. And this is where I think that the change is happening, that are people much more interested in knowing what's going on inside their bodies and how the things that they've done in terms of steps, exercise, diet are impacting their blood markers. One of the things that is very, very good to know is blood pressure. I don't know how many people in the room actually know their blood pressure and keep an eye on it, but clearly it's one of the most important things that you can do for health. Another is cholesterol. Does everybody know their cholesterol level? No. A lot of people don't, but you can't guess it. You know, you can't make assumptions. There's nothing about looking at someone which will tell you what their cholesterol level is. Blood sugar. You can have a guess at it in terms of perhaps someone's body shape, but there are a lot of very slim diabetics out there. You can't make an assumption about what your blood sugar is without measuring it. And the last one, of course, is things like liver function. You know, we're all worried about how much we drink, whether we're drinking over the limit, what the impact on our liver function might be, as well as what we're eating and what the effect on our liver fats in our liver might be. Liver inflammation is impossible to see until it's very advanced. Is it worth knowing? My view is it is worth knowing because it changes behaviour once you know it and can identify it. So given that we know... are we there?
I'm very sorry.
That's all right. Let's see if I can move on. So these are the trackings that I've just been talking about. And one of the assessments I would make is I think that generally speaking, people are much keener, because it's non-invasive, to do the top line, and they're less knowledgeable about the things which are probably more important about their health on the bottom line. And then we come on to why is that? You know, why do we know so little about our inner health? And one of the reasons really is the health system that we've got in the UK. It's fantastic and it's there to help us every step of the way, except really in some of the more preventative aspects. We have a very what I would consider a very paternalistic health system where people have trusted their doctor to sort of take care of them and look after them without feeling that they need to have any ownership of this at all or any responsibility in the decision. So doctor knows best. One of my examples about this is my father-in-law, who had a very, very good lifestyle but had some familial cholesterol problems and had a heart attack when he was 50. He's now in his 60s, late 60s, and he had to have a stent fitted and he's cholesterol monitored. All his life his cholesterol's been monitored. He's adjusted his lifestyle, he's done all the right things, and I asked him what his cholesterol was, but he didn't know. And I find that really extraordinary, that something that is so important to you in terms of your health, that he would just trust the doctor saying your cholesterol's fine or your cholesterol's not fine without actually knowing the number and really understanding it. There's an issue about owning your own data. Now, we can get our health records. I don't know if anyone has ever tried to get their health records. I certainly haven't. But I spend a lot of my time on a lot of the health forums out there to try and understand what our customers, what the issues they face are. And one of the issues they face is the impenetrable system of actually trying to get their health records. It's not part of the system everywhere yet. I think there are some places where you can get your health records quite easily, but if you have a blood test, what most often happens is that you'll get a receptionist ringing up to say your blood test is normal. And what does that mean? Is your blood test normal? That means it's within the 5th to 95th percentile of other people. Does it mean it's optimal? Not necessarily. It doesn't enable you to track it because you've got nothing to compare it with unless you've kept a record of these things over time. And then there's understanding your data. So your doctor will send you off with your phlebotomy form with a list of tests that mean nothing to most people. It's a haematology, it's a biochemistry, it's your LFTs. You know, what does all that mean? What are they testing? Why are they testing? And I think understanding your data is really important. It's important to know what's being tested and then what the results mean. And I think this is why people find that, you know, they have a vague idea of what's going on inside their body. They have a vague idea about some of the health markers that are important, but not actually what it means for them. So this is a doctor, it's just a chart, a slide I think is very funny. An explanation of your blood test results. I don't think I need to add anything to that, do I? But what I'm going to come on to now, things are changing, and I think this is something that's happening really fast. It's been happening. We've been witnessing it over the last 3 years. The internet, you can't underestimate the internet in terms of the amount of knowledge people now have about their health. And what is very clear today about the audience here and the speakers here is that this is a very, very knowledgeable group of people. They've got a problem. They've probably got to the end of the line with their conventional doctor in terms of treatment or what they can do next. And they've taken matters into their own hands. They've researched, they've tried things, they've experimented, and they're learning ways that they can overcome the symptoms or the problems that they might have. So Google has driven a lot of that. It's very, very easy to go to some really well-regarded sources now and find information. Equally, it's very easy to go to some very poorly regarded sources. So you do have to be careful about that information. But people are gaining knowledge. Online blood tests and health checks, obviously that's what my company does. Other companies are springing up offering the same thing. Naturally, I think ours is the better, but I shall leave you to be the judge. But they're very easy and accessible. You can go online, you can order a health check, you can take your health check at home through a finger prick sample, and you can get all your results back on a dashboard, and you can take that test as often as you like, and you can monitor your trends over time. These services are here and now. How many people have been to an online GP? It's a very useful, easy service, especially when you can't get an appointment at your doctor. How many people have gone online for a prescription? Again, you almost get to the stage where you think, well, why would I bother doing anything else? We're time pressed, we're busy lives, and these services are there and they're available and they're accessible. And then we have the consumerisation of health, and this is being led by technology. The sort of people who are doing this aren't necessarily doctors, they're not necessarily health professionals at all, but they're people who've looked at other industries and looked at how consumerising it, how making it more helpful, looking at the user experience, starting with you as opposed to what they know. And they've built systems and they've built processes that are now really, really easy. Online banking. Most of you probably have a banking app that you just do your day-to-day banking. Health is moving in the same sort of direction, with apps, with services, with language that make it all much easier for everybody to understand. It'll inform and it'll educate. And it's all about empowering the individual. And that means that your relationship with your doctor or your healthcare worker is going to change, because the power will be with you. The number of times we've given results to someone who's then gone to see their doctor and told their doctor what is the matter and what they would like to happen next, that is turning the traditional system completely on its head. And I'm not saying it's always a good thing, because I suspect there are a lot of doctors out there who feel slightly beleaguered about it. But I think it's a very important process for you to take responsibility for health. Okay, I'm not even looking at it, but thank you. So what happens when people know their inner health numbers? And these are just some of the health markers that you can change through lifestyle interventions. And what we did as a company was we thought, well, let's look at our data. We've done tens and tens of thousands of health checks and of all sorts of different markers. And we just took some of them, some of the typical ones that may be high, maybe low, things that if you change your lifestyle, you can actually impact them. And we saw what happened when people see, they get their numbers and they know what they're doing. They take action. So vitamin B12, it's an essential vitamin for anemia, transporting oxygen around the body, nerve health. So we started off with the number of people who had abnormally low vitamin B12. We looked at their next test. 74% of that population improved their vitamin B12. Vitamin D. Now vitamin D is low vitamin D is almost another plague of the UK. In the sense that over 60% of people, if not more, have low levels of vitamin D. But 86% of the people that we tested from their first result, which was out of range low, improved their result. And this is just because they have the information. They're taking the guesswork out of what they're supposed to be doing with their diet or their supplements. Ferritin, which is a measure of iron storage, 71% of people with low levels improved. HbA1c. Now this is a long-term measure of your blood sugar. So it's what you would measure if you were diagnosing or monitoring diabetes. 64% of people with high HbA1c, high blood sugar levels, improved their levels. Folate, which is another important nutrient, 91% of people with low levels improved. And this is just what our data is telling us. HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, people where it was too low, 76% improved. And the bad cholesterol, 67% improved. So it just goes to show with lifestyle interventions, with knowing where you stand, being able to take action and actually have something to work towards, you can make a difference. But you, in my view, you need to know what the number is to start with. Triglycerides is the level of blood, fat in your blood, 79% of people with high levels of triglycerides improved. So really that's come to the end of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to talk about the trends here of what is happening, the availability of products that can help you do this, and the fact that you can take ownership. And my pledge is taking ownership of your health starts here at ChippyWellFest. I'm happy for any questions if any of you have any.
Do you have any questions for Helen?
Do vitamin supplements work?
Do vitamin supplements work? In what sense do they work? So can they take...
The over-the-counter ones, you know, I've seen those, you know, I mean, suggestions that maybe they're not as effective as people think.
Yeah. I mean, I think vitamin supplements is quite a difficult area. There's a lot of studies show that actually they don't improve or cause mortality. But I think there are some areas of taking vitamin supplements. What you certainly can do is change your blood levels of a marker by taking a vitamin supplement. Can you change it with an over-the-counter one? It depends on the dose. And that's another reason why I say measure it. You know, if you've got low vitamin D and you take a supplement, an over-counter supplement that's hardly got any vitamin D in it, you might think you're doing yourself some good, but actually when you come to measure again, it's hardly moved. It's hardly made any difference.
So it depends on the quality.
Yeah.
Of the supplement.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
When you get your results from you,
Yeah.
Is there an explanation that comes with them, or does it say take it to a health professional?
So we
is there
have,
any advice
yeah,
that comes
yes there
with
is.
it?
I should have mentioned that. I mean, one of the things we do on the dashboard is explain what every marker is, what you can do about a low result, what you can do about a high result. But then we have a qualified doctor look at every health result, and we'll let you know what to do next. Because remember, a range of results is only a range of in distribution amongst a normal population. Being slightly outside that can be perfectly normal. And the doctor's job is actually to reassure you, to say, don't go charging off to see your GP with a set of results actually that means nothing. So one of the jobs that they do is make sure that they tell someone, is this significant and you need someone to have a look at it? Is this insignificant? Or repeat the test in 3 months, or make a lifestyle intervention and repeat the test in 6 months or something like that. So absolutely, we have a team of doctors looking at it. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I guess somebody had to ask it. How much does it cost?
It's very, very affordable. Yeah. It depends on what it is. So we will start with a single hormone test like testosterone for £29. We will do our top selling...
The big lump.
The big lump of our top-selling men's and women's health checks are £149, and that will test over 50 different markers, including your hormones, your thyroid, all your major body functions, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and we constantly have offers. You know, so if anyone is interested, just keep an eye on the website because we do have offers all the time.
So what are the differences between your test and the test that I can get when I go to my GP? And that I can also access online?
Yeah, well, very, very little. If you have the time to go to your GP, you can absolutely go to your GP. The big difference with ours is the number of different markers that we would test for. So your doctor is likely to test for all of them, perhaps if you're symptomatic or have a family history or you need to see these results. But where we appeal to people is the fact that it's for those people whose access to GPs is not as good as it could be because they have to make an appointment in 3 weeks. Then they have to go somewhere else to take their blood. You know, it's a
So it's
why
a
would you?
convenience.
Absolutely, it's
Okay.
convenient. It's convenience. It's range of tests. You know, we do far more tests.
It's also preventative, though, isn't it? It's about
Absolutely, yeah.
It's about you tend to have to go, with greatest respect, you tend to have to go to the doctor to say you have a problem, a
Yeah.
perceived problem, and the doctor has got to use discretional judgment as to whether to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas actually I can choose my own volition to use Helen's services tomorrow.
Yeah, and we will test markers that the doctors aren't even necessarily allowed to test. So, for example, with thyroid function, many doctors are only allowed to test a thyroid by testing TSH, maybe free T4, but we will test free T3 as well. And that's very, very difficult to get on the National Health. But it's mostly about accessibility, convenience. Yeah.
Sorry, is it skin prick as well?
It's a
What do you
variety.
need for the bottom?
Yeah, so we have, they're all proper laboratory tests, but some of them work off tinies, which are tiny little vials, where you prick your finger and you sort of milk the blood into a vial. It sounds more convenient in some ways than it is. You know, it's not necessarily a very easy thing to do, especially if you clot quickly. But we will do a number of different tests on that, but we don't do the very comprehensive ones because the failure rate is too high. You might start clotting too soon and that ruins your sample. So there are a number of things where we know people have a good success in getting samples that we will do off a finger prick. Otherwise, we've got a network of clinics all around the country. You can walk into a Superdrug. If they've got a nurse clinic, we're working with Superdrug now to make it something that's easily done on the high street. So,
Any other questions?
Does it include PSA?
we do a PSA test. We used to include a PSA test with our general health, men's health screen, but actually we've just taken it out to make it a positive decision by someone that they want PSA, because I think you probably might be aware that cancer markers are not necessarily great screening tools because there are a lot of false positives and false negatives. So if anyone is going down that path, we want them to be absolutely sure they know what they're letting themselves in for. Yeah, but it is available, as is an ovarian cancer marker for a woman.
How do you deliver the results?
Pardon?
How do you deliver the results?
We deliver it on a personal dashboard. So you log into your dashboard where you'll be able to see the doctor's overview of all the results. And then you can log into each marker and you can look at it in terms of where it is in the range and where is it against any history that you might have had, together with a description of what it might mean. Interestingly, we've got quite a big market now of people in sports who are looking for how they can improve their athletic performance. And so we will comment on a range of sports markers using sports doctors who understand that, you know, an iron result or a ferritin result for an athlete might be different in terms of its interpretation compared with someone who's not very active. So all the results are on a dashboard. But if you wanted a printed PDF, you can print it out and take it to your doctor.
That's me, an athlete.
Pardon?
That's me, I'm an athlete.
Are you collecting information about how people react to them? Like you gave us percentages. So are you collecting information about how they raise their values or reduce them?
Through lifestyle measures only. So we don't, what we wouldn't do is diagnose a condition. So if someone came to us with a high HbA1c result, we wouldn't say you have diabetes. We would say your result is in the range which indicates you need to go and see your doctor.
No, I meant, say if they had low vitamin D, are you collecting
Yeah.
information about how they
Absolutely.
how they raised it,
Yeah.
what they did to improve it?
Exactly. We do that. So we will let people know what they need to be doing to improve their vitamin D levels. So there's some elements of lifestyle advice that we will give, but we're not diagnosing conditions.
No, I'm just saying
Yeah.
retrospectively.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
you successfully increased your vitamin D through doing this, so then you could collect information of what works for
Absolutely.
people most efficiently.
Yes.
You see what I mean? Like a feedback.
Yeah, well, we're trying to get as much of that as possible, and one of the things that we're starting to do now is work more with organisations where they're looking at sort of health initiatives of getting perhaps people active, and they're wanting to see the evidence of does this help a community. So if we can provide, you know, a very basic blood test that shows before and after, then they have that evidence that they can take to their funding bodies that helps them get funding for doing more trials in this area. So we're working with the Sports Tech Hub precisely to do this at the moment.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.